we spent some time together yesterday. I was really impressed. They certainly know their stuff and have a lot of good things to share. To my left, your right, Brendan Cleary, who's the VP of Programmatic Sales and Ad Operations at The Guardian. Jeff Lustig, Manager of Programmatic Operations at News Corp. Jen Sun, the Associate Director of Product and Programmatic Operations at DotDash. And down at the end there, Mr. Jason Tate from MediaNews. So you get Jason and myself, and I'm Nick Ames with McClatchy. We're with legacy publishers. The Guardian, you guys are probably, I don't know how you'd classify yourselves, probably
200-year-old British newspaper.
Yes, and of course the Fox portfolio, and DotDash probably the true.
I mean, we're still 20 years old.
Right.
At the end of the day, we were about .com until 2 years ago.
So PMP, and this is where I think we, starting to define it is probably important. I think, Brandon, you wanted to take this one on. When somebody comes to you and says, I want to do a PMP, or a sales rep comes and, what is a PMP exactly? And, what do you define it as?
Sure. And kind of based on our conversation yesterday, I would definitely want to start out and confirm that it's non-guaranteed. We're essentially opening up a door for a brand or a buyer to access the inventory and the audience at a specific price point. But in no way should that ever be something where we should expect X or a brand should expect Y. We could be sold out for a day and they could see 0 impressions, or there could be 1,000 reasons why they aren't spending through the PMP. So I always just want to level set things as it's just a way to access the inventory, but there's no contracts in place.
Got it. So eMarketer recently, last month actually, released a report that they're anticipating 50% or PMP sales to overtake open auction spending within programmatic next year. This year they're forecasting it to be actually pretty close to 50-50. I'm curious, how does that line up with your guys' reality? Starting with Jeff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so for us, we own a variety of different O&Os and properties, so it varies depending on the brand. As you can imagine, Wall Street Journal is very different than Realtor, just in terms of audience and scale. But I would say that we definitely see it headed in that direction. Specifically on some of the larger properties, we're getting a lot of traction there.
Just out of curiosity, is this working? Okay. Out in the crowd, what do you guys want to know about PMPs? Like, are you guys selling a lot of them? Do you not care about them? Because we chatted yesterday and we're all like, yeah, we get PMPs. They're a pretty big part of our business. We have a system going. But what's helpful for you guys to know? Like, how to define PMPs, or?
Let's take a step past defining PMPs. How are you differentiating what goes into PMPs and making that valuable from what's in the open auction? And I guess the question is, like, why should advertisers care about PMPs now? We know why it was before, but like, why now and why going forward?
I can start with that for sure. So as part of the initiative I'm on at News Corp, we have a division called NewsIQ. And essentially what that is doing is leveraging all of the first-party data across all of the properties and allowing buyers to take that and buy across property. So we're doing that also. We do it through both managed services and through PMPs. And currently, that is the only way to buy News Corp inventory with first-party data across property. So for us, data is a really key differentiator that we can kind of leverage outside of just pure audience.
Would you be willing to say what percentage of your PMPs are audience-based or contextual-based?
So for NewsIQ, it's 100% audience based because that's what what it was designed to do.
I'd say we're 70-30. 70 audience, 30% contextual. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys, I think, are further than me on that. I mean, I don't put any data on it right now. But like 35% of our business is PMP, right? I use scale, like, you know, because we have 100 newspapers all around the country. I mean, that's a pretty large footprint, right? So I sell that, our volume. But the buyers that want local news, at least that I've ran into, you know, they want the loyal consumers. They don't want the fly-by traffics, right? You know, just come in there because they saw something on Facebook. So we haven't even really gone down that road. I think the 50% is not out of question if we're already at 35, but we've been in, actually just pulled the numbers this morning. This month we're like at 33, right? But we hover right around 30, 35. I was curious to the crowd, is that about the range, or is it lower? Is it much higher? You know, what can we learn, you know, back from, I mean, we're all in this together, right? So
Yeah,
just a curiosity, like 30% is PMPs in your business, raise your hand. 20%, 10%, 0%. Yeah, 40, 50%. Yeah, right. So, I mean, great.
And you're not including PGs in that number, right?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so the way that I consider it, there's direct and there's indirect, right? Indirect's everything else. If we broker some native deals, PMP, right?
Right.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, I hate the whole terminology PMP because, like we were saying yesterday, like it's such a bullshit word. It's like it includes 4 different things, right? What is it? Can we just, as an industry, throw it out the window and it's just reserved and unreserved?
I don't know if we need another acronym though.
Exactly.
That's where we lead to.
We all love acronyms, though.
Right.
So.
No, but to your question about like the value prop, it's tough. And when you just think of like what goes on in the open versus what goes on when you kind of speak to a human, you're able to give more customer service. So what that means when you're working with a newspaper, there's a lot of worries about brand safety. News isn't nice all the time, and it's not always something that brands want to be adjacent to. So I can work out specific deals with advertiser X to ensure that they're only going to be in lifestyle content, or I can block news entirely or focus on specific keywords. So if there is kind of like that value prop versus the open, it's just working with a person.
Yeah, I would say as far as like the data, right? Like we're not doing anything special, but when you're working with like a target, right? They don't want to be associated with political, death, any of that stuff. So we have to block news. We're a news company. They want to be on lifestyle entertainment, but they want that. They know our users are loyal. They come to our sites every day. But they basically have like 20 blocks, right? I don't know if any of you guys work with Target on anything. Yeah. But, it's like, here's our block list. It's like, well, there goes our whole website except for entertainment.
Target's an interesting example because I think it illustrates the difference between how different buyer strategies are and how flexible and how do you build that into your organization. I mean, on the programmatic side, I mean, the flexibility to respond to the wide array of strategies and needs that you might see on the buy side.
I can take this one. And this also sort of ties into Scott's question earlier, which is like, how do you set up the value prop? I think the way we look at it, and I'm curious, you should probably go check this out yourself, but if we pulled a report for DotDash of CPMs for the open marketplace for private auctions, PDs, and then also PGs and then direct. You see a clear ladder going up in terms of the open market CPM for some inventory is going to be, $2, $3, and it goes up to 4 to 5 for PAs, 8 to 9 for PDs, if not 12 to 13, and then finally on direct, you're doing like 14, 15, depending on the vertical. So there's like a clear value prop there where if an advertiser wants quality, like sort of inventory, they're gonna have to pay more for it, and we tell them that. And then the other thing is performance also increases as you go up. So, let's say Target is buying. We've had clients where like, we can buy you for, $2 on the open. Why would we want to buy you through a PD where it's more expensive? And what we say is, look, when you're buying on the open, all you see from the demand side is the site domain. Like, you're buying the spruce, .com, but you could be, getting really shit inventory at the bottom of the page. You don't really know what's going on. And then so I also recommend like pulling a report for you guys in viewability for the open market, PAs, PDs, PGs, and so on. For us, we see the open market viewability is usually hovering around 50%, 60%. Once you get into PDs and PGs, that's when you're getting 70%, 80%. And so for advertisers, we're like, if you want performance, if you want that 70% viewability, if you want us helping you target to where you could be performing better, you're going to want to do the PDs and sort of the more direct relationships, if you want.
Yeah, to add to that, I think we touched on it yesterday, like, we want to be as flexible as possible, right? We want, if you say jump, we say how high, as long as you're spending money with us, right?
We have the SSPs, like, we don't
Yeah,
care what
like,
you
I
go
don't
through.
care what you go through, but like, be connected to everyone. Like, I like to say partner agnostic, like, because if somebody says, well, I only buy on AppNexus, right? Great, I've got them in EB and TAM, so you can buy us through there. Great, or whatever. There's 37 other ones out there. So just have everything available so you can be as flexible as possible. And then it's like, I think did we say yesterday, like, in terms of like a rate card, like for each of these levels, again,
You should be
flexible.
there.
Like, all right, you want $1 lower? Great. You want $1 higher? Great. Means nothing to me. Just spend as much as you possibly can.
So, and Brendan, yesterday you had an interesting story kind of around GDPR and kind of what it forced you to do, adapt your strategy into more performance, and talked a little bit about how you even structured some of your site and packaged that together. Hey, where are people finding it valuable from the Guardian in terms of deals? What are they typically asking you guys for?
Sure. And I can even kind of start kind of based on like some changes that the site's seen. So when I started at the Guardian in September 2015, I'll remember my first week, a lot of my new colleagues were kind of giving me a hard time because as someone who's managing like the surplus inventory of a website, I didn't realize that we'd just gone through a site redesign. And what that was to focus on the user. So to ensure that everyone's going to have a better time on the site, we reduced the ads by 30% across the whole site. So
Are you guys lazy loading too?
yeah. But at the time, if I come in and I have a goal that I have to hit, but I just lost 30% of the inventory, it was kind of like rough news initially. But what we learned was that by focusing on the user and keeping our audience as the target for us to always try and please, we ended up finding out that less is more. And by reducing the amount of ads on the page, it created like scarcity, and that's not something that really exists too much on the internet. So DSPs were the first to realize that they had to fight more and they had to bid up to win more inventory. So initially, like in the short term, we took a hit, but long term, we ended up making more money after removing all those ads.
And Jeff, I know yesterday Mike, mentioned that a very specific tactic that they do at Hearst in building first-party data, actually around, what sounded like almost a customer's first-party data to build lookalike audience. And that's something you guys are engaged with as well. I mean, when you package together, direct deals programmatically with buyers, what are some of the most sought after, most performant packages that you guys have out there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so as you can imagine with, so one of our flagship properties is the Wall Street Journal, and so you can imagine we have a lot of financial clients, banks and whatnot who want to run there. And that inventory is obviously incredibly valuable, but one of the things that we've been able to do as part of NewsIQ is build and leverage their own first-party, their own data, CRM data, as well as lookalike audiences, figure out those users across Wall Street Journal, and then figure out how we can target them on some of our other properties as well. And so that's something that's a strategy that we found to be successful, but also something that requires really good communication with the advertiser, especially if they come in wanting to buy Wall Street Journal and we're selling essentially an audience play and their data. We have to tell a really good brand story to kind of explain how we're targeting those users across network. But yeah, we've done that with both lookalikes. We do ABM too. So we've had some really successful campaigns with some big financial clients with that.
And is there anything interesting along those lines, I guess, with DotDash as far as how you guys go to market with your first party data as well?
Yeah, so I think what's sort of different about DotDash compared to you guys, where it's news content, a lot of like high audience plays, is we're pretty contextual. And I think I said like 70% audience for our PMPs. What I meant by that was actually DSPs and the buyers who are trying to like find PMPs to build out, they already have their own third-party data. And so for us, it's sort of along the lines of what Jason was saying, it's like for us, when I say audience, I mean, hey, yeah, just run on the spruce.com like as a whole, and you're probably gonna get whatever audience you want, or run a network on DotDash, it's 90 million uniques, you'll find your audience in that way. So we actually don't put a lot of like first-party data constraints on them, because scale is really where it's at, and that's the 70-30.
Yeah, they're doing it already on their end.
Yeah.
What percentage are you adding your own data to it?
Okay, yeah. So for me, that's contextual, which is in the sense of like, hey, you're, I don't know, Tyson, and you want to sell chicken breasts or whatever, and we have the spruce eats. Like, let us target just the chicken recipe section of our content, and that I think that's like 30%. In that sense, like, so there's,
we like same
you're
thing.
looking at me like, huh?
Specific contextual.
Like getting down to, for us, we're like subsections of a site, or like, hey, this set
like-
of documents or articles.
Like us, right? Like we own the Boston Herald. They have great sports coverage.
Right.
Obviously, the teams in Boston, right? Last year in the Super Bowl, MGM was getting ready to open up a new thing. They knew they had to be on Boston, and they wanted specifically anything to do with Tom Brady. And so they were like, I will spend as much money as we possibly can, just put it all on whatever Tom Brady. I didn't pull that from anything. I just know that our sports section has a Tom Brady section, or a Patriots section. So I just targeted that and just showed them the avails, right?
Like create a segment of Tom Brady, people who read Tom Brady, and then give them back a PMP of like anyone that's read about Tom Brady across all of our sites, even if they're in the food section at some point there.
Haven't gotten that far.
Does your floor change in that instance?
To a degree. I mean, if it's like a PG or a PD, I think it, kicks up a few notches, but I typically like to just throw like $1 or $2 on top of kind of what we're seeing in the open market to make sure that they're getting as many impressions as possible to please them, right? That way they come back later, hopefully.
And that's a great question, because how do you put a price on
That's what I said,
first party?
be flexible. I mean, because you don't want to outprice yourself either. It's like, if you throw $7, $8, $9, $10 on it, and they only buy 10% of the inventory because that's what their budget says, or not even their budget, but like they don't get a lot of value out of that. So if you, not say cut it in half, but I think just agree and be flexible, right? And then give them as much as possible. I always like to do the old, like when Centro was just pumping orders everywhere, I'd always throw 10% inventory when I booked it in DFP to make sure that campaign delivered, and they kept coming back.
We just spoke about sponsored content. Are any of you kind of like connecting the sponsored content that you're producing with your PMP as well, so you're creating segments to retarget that audience?
No.
Yeah, that's a no.
Not really.
I mean, this is being recorded, but
Probably
a
should.
lot of the sponsored
Right.
content traffic that you're getting is not the best quality of readers, and the scale that you're trying to build off, hey, this person read this piece of, like, this article is just not large enough. for it to be worth it.
Yeah, and not for us either. I mean, we do plenty of sponsored content, but it would all be through managed services to make that work well.
Is, maybe not branded content, but are there some, kind of outside the 300 by 250 box, programmatic really at the end of the day is just a set of pipes. Are there rich media executions that people go after, and what's working well, I guess, maybe custom to what you guys have set up within programmatic, going beyond just, the first party data, but the ad experience.
Sure. For us, anything like that, any custom execution, programmatically can only really live within a PG deal, and that's when we're going to be uploading the ads that we probably paid someone to build. It's more of automating a direct IO, but there's no RTB decisioning or anything in there.
I would say for us it would be a native advertising. I mean, so we actually set up native through pre-bid last year, and we've seen really good performance with it. Specifically because we can work with our teams to create units that are really engaging, and since we're vetting those advertisers, we can put them in really nice places, and they look really good, and they perform excellent, and we get really great repeat business from it.
How do you define native?
It's a unit that takes the look and feel of content. So, for us, an example of that might be on one of the front pages, one of the units that would be reserved for a story.
In the edit well itself?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then that would be replaced with a specific template design that we have literally specific examples of what we need to fit in from character length and whatnot.
Do you ever get people complaining that they thought it was content, but they clicked on it and it turned out to be an ad?
No, I mean, it hasn't hit me. Maybe they do, but it hasn't ever come to me from the operations side.
For what it's worth, our SEO team refuses to allow us to sell native ads. So we're like, we sell native, but in standard IAB slots.
Yeah, that's what I do. I can't do it. And what site do you do that on, Jeff?
We do it on Realtor, the Post, and Wall Street Journal.
The Journal lets you do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's, as you can imagine, they sell a lot of that direct. So the competition is quite stiff there.
So organizationally, to pull this off, and I know, Jeff, you probably have a real, a huge data organization. You talked a little bit about NewsIQ. Where, if money is going into PMPs, obviously you've got sales. You're gonna have to beef up training and resources and people on the feet on the street there. You're obviously, if first-party data is going to be more important in the future in applying PMP deals, you got to have a data team as well, and then a pretty good finance operation as well to make sure everybody's getting paid and money's all going to the right places. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys have NewsIQ set up and how it supports your PMP business?
Sure. I mean, NewsIQ has only been around for News Corp for about a year and a half, and I started after they'd been around about 6 months. It's a pretty interesting organization in that it exists specifically just to help our BUs essentially make more money. NewsIQ acts as a separate entity inside of News Corp, but doesn't book any specific revenue. All of the revenue that our sellers generate outside of cost go back into the BUs. Whether or not that deal originated, the idea would be, let's say the deal originated from the Wall Street Journal, NewsIQ gets appended essentially as a product and then gets sold across all of the different BUs. So while it may have originated from Wall Street Journal and there's a specific direct buy with them, it could also, for a couple of specific audiences, run across our network of ONOs.
And you know, what's the typical, when you stand that up, you know, what kind of skill sets and you know, what kind of people are you attracting into those roles? You know, what's the lead time to get an understanding for what all, you know, putting all that data together?
Yeah, I mean, sure. So I think the biggest challenge is just, in general, is just education. And so, you know, it's a massive organization. I think even now, still, you know, we're still teaching people what NewsIQ is and how to sell it, because you have a lot of legacy people doing direct that we want them to have this as an opportunity to essentially append onto a buy. So that's definitely, you know, been a challenge, and a lot of it's just been having, you know, just really good internal communication, internal documentation that I spend a lot of time putting together. And then the harder part of that is really getting people to read it and understand it. So that's really been, you know, our strategy.
Yeah, and Jason, I'm curious, you know, there is a smaller publisher, you know, how do you get, you know, and we don't have a data team like NewsIQ ourselves. We're probably in the same boat. What does that, you know, tell me a little bit about, you know, who do you put PMPs and give them the green light to go ahead and market and sell them? You know, what are the channels? Do we put them into just kind of throw the ball out there and let the salespeople run, or you know, what kind of support do they typically need?
It's me, and that's it. So
you're the one selling PMPs.
it's me. I do it. I put it in DFP myself. I do the reporting on it. I count the pennies coming in. We're not small by any means. I mean, with 100 newspapers, we've got like, you know, 8,000 to 10,000 employees, right? You know, but no, we do. We've got a BI team, but I think it's two people, right? One's kind of does more like salesy stuff, and one does more kind of audience stuff. But that's where like it stops, because the level of reporting that our company does, being owned by a hedge fund, as you can imagine, spotlight's always on. So there's a lot of reports. You know, we got to make sure we're hitting our margins. I was showing Ray. I was showing you yesterday, Rafe, a report we just produced this week. It's 170 pages. Tableau spit it out. We just had to upload all the data. You know, I mean, I pull the reports and I upload them to our data warehouse, and then the BI team, just as good with Tableau, creates a report. But it's just two people, me and her. Like, that's it. So, but then I got to spend my time budgeting, creating strategy, partner management. You know, I'm an accountant some days. So, you know, we operate pretty thin. I think, you know, as far as like the skill set goes, you learn over time. You know, I've been in media for 15 years now and done a little bit of everything, and jack of all trades, so to speak. But I know we got a guy on our team, he's been in it for like 4 years. He's getting there, you know, maybe not as fast of a pace, but, you know, he gets it enough to talk about it, but it's like the execution, right? You know, it's got to be done, otherwise we don't make money. Like, to sell a PMP, it's like execute, move on, execute, move on. So staying on top of things. I mean, certainly playing golf here for a few days set things back a little bit, but
Like your PMP spend has been
yeah, like that's probably why we're at 32% instead of 35% this month. You know, but no.
I'm in the same boat. I am working this weekend. So.
Yeah, you know, probably don't hit me up next week. Maybe the week after, but then we're like in 4th of July, so now I'm pushing you back to like mid-July, maybe late July. I don't know.
So Jen, what about DotDash? I mean, what does your sales structure look like when it comes to PMPs? And you know, I know you guys are based in New York. You know, how important is it to have feet on the street in New York when you are, you know, selling these deals?
Yeah, so I guess two thoughts there. Or the first thought is, I don't know about you guys, but to me, PMPs are here to stay. Like, programmatic buying and selling of impressions is here to stay.
Yeah, brands are getting smarter. They know that they can hire the person as opposed to spending $100,000 a year on an agency, or you know, or more, right? A hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
You know, why don't we just pay somebody, you know, in the Midwest at least, like, you know, 60, 70, 80 grand to just manage this business? And we just saved, you know, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. So for us, like that's the premise that we're on, and so we're all in on programmatic and building out a sustainable org. The way we work is our sales team sells integratedly, so they sell both direct and programmatic, and then we have sort of like a cross-functional programmatic team that's super lean for us. We're like 5 people. There's someone who does programmatic ops, so she manages the open marketplace, which something that I think is converging more and more closely with just PMP sales in general. So there's that, and then we have a like PMP ops expert. So this woman is like in and out talking to SSPs. Like when new products come out, she's like, yes, this is how you execute, and she's sort of like the consultant to all the account strategists on the actual sort of sales team. If they ever have PMP questions, she's the one that sort of helps solve and answer those questions for them. So I definitely recommend, I think it's worth investing in, if you care about PMPs, investing in someone who has PMP operations experience, understands the stack and all the details and all that, because that's going to kickstart your business, I think, like right away. And I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think the way that our company thinks about it is, do we hire, like a McClatchy, right? You guys, what Nick say, you guys got 4 or 5 people in New York?
We have 2 right now.
Or 2, right? So the way that I look at it, and me and my bosses talk about it, it's like, all right, do we spend potentially $500,000 a year to throw a few people up in New York on salaries? Or do you just work a little harder and we'll just bonus you? Yeah, I'll work a little harder and make more money myself.
Right. I think
so. I'm going to say no to throwing people in New York, but I think we need 1, maybe 2, possibly. But all the brands that are spending money, they're all in like the Midwest, right? For the most part, and in the South. So I'm in Cincinnati, so it's like I can be anywhere within like an hour probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is also more specifically for like operations. Like it sounds like you're selling and doing the ops.
Yeah, well,
Superman.
we do have a few ops guys on our team,
Right.
but they're more troubleshooting. They're more kind of yield guys. They help with reporting. Like we just brought on a great guy. He's basically my counterpart, but to take over a lot of that kind of operational part of the job, so I can actually concentrate more on selling. That's what I was hired for a year and a half ago, but my predecessor left. They're like, we're not going to replace her. It's all you now. It's like, it's frustrating, but, we're getting there.
Yeah, and I think just about everyone, I mean, I think it makes sense. Every organization seems to have like a programmatic ninja, and it was almost born out of necessity. But as it becomes a little bit more mature and a little bit more organized, some of those responsibilities are starting to break down, and some of us ninjas have to give up and teach some others some of this other stuff. Brendan, what about you guys? How are you typically, what are you guys doing on the sales side? How are you structured there to go to market with PMPs? Are there other channels? A lot of these DSPs have marketplaces. Do any of those perform for you guys? Do they bring in, a sizable amount of leads or business?
Yeah, I mean, I think every deal is going to be kind of a hit or miss, again, when it's non-guaranteed. But in terms of structure, we have a small sales team. I think there's about 7 across the whole country right now. But something I definitely kind of want to like address, and we've all kind of talked through, like training, coaching, education. For me, as someone who's been kind of doing this for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, that never really ends. This stuff's so complicated. You kind of have to like be reading the trades every day. I mean, I do it, I go through either Ad Exchanger and, a handful of others, spend time on LinkedIn.
Media Post? You ever go to that Media Post?
Do I have to pay for Media Post? No? All right, then perfect. I'll go there every day.
It's interesting you bring that up because, I mean, with all the noise, do you find a lot of disinformation out there as well as
fake news
training, specifically around programmatic?
No, I mean, I like going on LinkedIn because I feel like programmatic's kind of like a place where everyone's trying to be the smartest person in the room.
Yep.
And I like sometimes, granted I'm up here now, but sometimes it's cool to just sit there and listen. And on LinkedIn, everyone's kind of like giving away a lot of cool like secrets and stuff. So that's a good place to get some new ideas and strategies.
I literally have LinkedIn just open all the time on my computer.
Yeah.
If I'm on a call, I can like ping over real quick, like
Right.
see who it is, connect, send them a note. What's your email? What's your phone number?
I think just having the connections with other people is really where you get the insights, and you ask them, what are you doing, trying to figure it out, because it's hard to do in a silo, that's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely have a text chain with other pubs. And every time a new vendor comes across, or if somebody has a big deal, it's like, are these guys full
You
of
heard of
shit?
these guys?
Yeah, totally.
Another company from Tel Aviv.
Yeah. But it's definitely helpful. Again, it's super confusing. There's a new acronym every day. There's a new company every day. So I need help staying on top of it.
So speaking of the acronym, there's also, it seems like a new platform every day, and a lot of what we've talked about over the last 2 days from other folks is, about Apple News and podcasts and, maybe Facebook. I don't think anybody's mentioned Facebook Instant Articles, but all these different platforms, and they've got different technological requirements. Do you guys spend a lot of time in extending your programmatic tech stack into those platforms where you can, or does that, does that aspect of it where we may have a limited ability to sell programmatically play into the role of, maybe product pushing into some of those platforms?
Yeah, I just shook my head. No, we don't do. We're very much focused on our O&O. There's not too much. We're building our social presence, but it's not much distribution there. But 2 years ago, we were playing around with Google AMP. That's because DotDash is like 80% SEO search traffic. So we thought, or people said, if you moved all your articles to AMP, then they'd rank higher, get more traffic. And then later on, it turns out we did a test first on this is more on the product side, but our actual mobile pages run as fast as AMP anyway. And so there really wasn't a point for us to invest all of that effort in there. And then the monetization point, like we could not monetize AMP as well as our actual mobile pages. And things might be a little bit different now. It's worth
they've grown over
but
the last year. They're starting to allow a couple more things on there, so you could revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Jeff? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that we do. We probably do it more so. The different views all sort of operate very differently in terms of how they sort of dip their toes in the water, and so it's probably less of a corporate thing and more so up to each individual business unit how they want to handle that, because they just operate differently.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point, because all of our websites are so different. And I've worked at a few pubs. I can't speak for every publisher, but we all pretty much have Frankenstacks, and if you're you guys managing a bunch of different publishers, it's not one size fits all. So I only manage one website, and even I'm trying to test a lot, but I can imagine it must be a nightmare for you guys trying to find new solutions for hundreds of different
and multiple CMSs and different designs. Because it works in one market, it might be completely different in a different market.
So curious to know if there's any additional questions. I mean,
I was going to add
I wanted to take the flip side of your question, Nick, and go back to platforms and PMPs versus the platforms. Since you're all competing with the platforms, where are you finding the most traction or resonance with brands in your selling proposition, competing with the platforms themselves? What aspects of your private marketplaces really are resonating most with your clients as the place to be, rather than simply making the easier buy on one of the platforms?
Is that for you? Again, it's performance. It's the customer service we're going to deliver, and like I said before, news can be challenging in terms of content. I wager that Facebook can be in that same boat. So it's putting together packages that are going to put brands in a positive light and not adjacent to content they don't want to be around.
Yeah, I'd say back to just being flexible, right, and let them, first thing I ask, what do you need for this campaign to work or for you to come back? I just ask them flat out, and generally they say, well, I need to hit this, this, and that. Like, we will do our absolute best.
This is sort of a cop-out, but for DotDash, it's our intent. Like, you go to Facebook and you're just scrolling down the news feed, you're not in that purchase sort of intent mindset, whereas if you're searching about how to cook a turkey tonight or whatever, you know you're about to go buy a turkey at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's data and audience, but then on the flip side, for the PMP is also buyer insights. So we're able to kind of tie our bid data together through pre-bid and our analytics, and kind of give better insight to the buyers as to outside of just kind of their win rate, as to, you know, what they're winning on, how to win more, and then also optimization in terms of specific units, so we can actually help them even if they're the one buying. You know, give some actual guidance. Not the same as managed service in terms of us doing it all for them, but you know, we're kind of giving them the information, and hopefully they use it.
Yeah, it's a great question, but it's incredibly complicated.
Well, those are 4 different answers, which is
Right.
really interesting to me.
Yeah.
That there were 4 different answers.
And yeah, at the end of the day, it really is. It's dictated by the buyer. And, you know, one thing that we've worked really hard over the last 3 months on is getting those expectations up front, understanding what the buyer's looking for, understanding what their performance metrics are, what kinds of things they want to be, you know, whether, you know, brand safety wise away from. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, you got to remember that on the other side, they're applying a lot of times their own data. And it's unknown how good our audience is going to match with theirs prior to. Sometimes it's fantastic. Sometimes, you know, it's once in a blue moon, and those are the deals that just don't spend very well. But yeah, being flexible and getting those expectations and monitoring them are incredibly important, because a lot of times you may get dropped from a programmatic plan, and it's not like you get an email. They just push a button, and it could be 2 weeks, and somebody, you know, well, what happened here? Nobody knows. So it's definitely something that we've taken seriously, is getting those expectations up front.
I was going to add to that. I've gotten pretty good at learning that buy side, simply because my wife works for Kroger and she's a marketing manager. Her and her team are putting together the KPIs and the plan. Mm-hmm. Then they just kick it over to their buy group, and all they do is just execute it. So if you say, can you send me your KPI sheet or your plan sheet or whatever? They go, well, we can, you know, do a screen share, and they're like, we need to hit this, 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 and that. Like, all right, let me get back with you here in a couple hours. We'll see what we can throw together. And then we come back. If we can't do something, just flat out tell them, like, all right, well, but we can shift over here, maybe give them a couple different options. So.
Nick, folks, that was great. Thank you so much. That was a great
I told you, they're fantastic.
I think it was. Well, I think it's sort of what this